there's a president of the fan club for James Outman, our guy Scott Geirman is whatever the opposite of that is. So Scott, when do we shift from a guy who can't hit and a guy who can't field and a guy who can't run bases in center field to a guy who can at least do two of those three things competently, even if the third one makes you want to put your head through a wall?
First off, it's really good to see you guys. How are you tonight?
Likewise.
I know. I've been tuned in. As you know, I've been chat. It's great to see you, Jeff, and it's awesome. I mean, look, there's a lot of different ways that we can take the conversation. I understand about Outman. There's a tweet out there that I put that it was like, there's something, if you need to stabilize a position, then there's options where you can do that defensively. And then I've always been like with the Kiermaier conversation, it was, you understand what you're getting with him. You're getting a glove. You take what you get with the bat, but at least you solidify the defense. You know what I mean? So I understand where you're at from there. I've even said it before. You can find the tweet about just give me some stabilization in center field. I don't know. Like, I hear it. I just would like to go with an option. If they have it, if they can find a way to stabilize center field with Tommy Edman, man, like he's so smooth out there. If that's the way they go, Jeff, I know you love him at second base. I do too. But I think that if you dive back into the James Outman stuff, then you're pushing Andy Paez into a platoon with Michael Conforto in left, and I'm okay with it all around, man. I would like to see Tommy Edman get some more run in center field. I think that for me stabilizes it, and then you have options in the infield. Get some Chris Taylor run in there. Get some, Hyeseong Kim. They've got other ways to go, man.
Yeah. I mean, let me ask you that, because you mentioned if a guy like Outman were to be in the mix, then all of a sudden you are platooning Michael Conforto with Andy Paez, which is, I think there's a lot of people in the chat that may not be James Outman fans that may have just slightly become James Outman fans at the prospect of Michael Conforto being in a full-time platoon, because I know he's not a guy that's overly popular right now.
Sure.
So, I mean, do you think that's like, in your mind, is that a real part of the equation, which is if we can solidify either center field or second base and somehow keep Paez on the roster, then all of a sudden maybe it actually adds strength to a corner outfield spot because both those guys are hitting on the right side of platoons?
Yeah, and I agree with you. And I'll say, yes, I think there's a line where the Dodgers do things best is find the best things a player can do. And we've seen Andy Paez. I've made some jokes. If he only had a brain, then he would be, a stellar ball player. He's got tools. He's got a cannon. We've seen this in the past. Reckless abandonment. You go out there. Yeah, we've seen it. I forgot. I think Joe Davis had a line to like last night or tonight. It was like, it made me think of, I know people are going to laugh, but it's like Puig with the arm. It's that if he just made some decisions, he can uncork one wherever. But we've seen him. I was at Jackie Robinson night where he uncorked a couple throws from right field. And then it was like, I didn't know he had that in his bag, because in center field, you don't get to see it on. You see the plays where he has to think or make a good throwing decision. Instead, when you're in a corner spot, like we saw with Teoscar last year, you're firing one. You're cutting down a runner, taking an extra base, tagging up. I'd love Andy Paez, and I think he would flourish in a corner spot, get him back in a platoon against lefties where he was exceptional last year. Jeff, I know this might sidetrack it. I was going to type it in chat before I came on. I think there's more things to talk about with like Max Muncy, where we're at with him, where we're at with Mookie Betts. Shohei Ohtani's got to get going. I see everybody in chat. I don't just pop in when things are bad. I really think this is a moment when people have to take a breath and look around, and there's a lot of things that once they stabilize and the sample gets to about 150 at-bats, then we can talk about it, because it's too many things right now. The pitching isn't going well. The offense is showing up when the pitching doesn't do it. I want to hush that for a second, because everybody's going off way too hard. Like, you can put out every single fire this early. You just can't.
Yeah. Yeah. Look, the record is what it is. Anthony, I want to let you chime in on the idea of sort of solving second base and center field, and then actually keeping Paez around to be in the right side of a platoon. And then we can move on. But Anthony, I want to get your thoughts on that before we do.
Yeah, I'm with Scott on the 150 plate appearance thing. It's generally the number organizations will use to say, like, yay or nay on something.
Yeah.
I personally, right now, would rather see Edman in center, and then you fix the second base spot from there. So whether that's Freeland or Kim or whatever, I at the moment, I tend to think maybe Freeland gets the first, kind of right of refusal, sort of, so to speak. And let's see if he can play second base, and let's see if he can keep the bat to ball skills at the major league level. And then, you can keep the platoon in left. Before I would want to see Outman up, unless Outman just all of a sudden starts that 7 games hitting streak turns into 30 or something like that, right? Then sure. But because I think you give yourself the best chance there of maybe getting somebody who can do both things for you. Beyond that, down the road, Pages is still this version of him. Then I would be in the camp of, let's get something that we know is predictable, which is really good center field defense. Then I would be in the camp of, you know what? We gave you a legitimate shot. You could not win the position full time. We're going to now bring Outman up and we're going to let him roam that position.
Well, I'm glad you mentioned Freeland, because I remember being on Twitter, a month ago and saying, why can I get an info on why nobody's talking about this guy who's a top 50 prospect everywhere, who's the most major league guy they had on the position player side outside of Dalton Rushing, who plays a harder defensive position, which is shortstop. Again, maybe I'm naive to think if you could play shortstop, how hard is it to move over to second base? And who, by the way, is absolutely hitting the ball in AAA at the same time. So to me, he's the name that never gets brought up. I'll add, and I haven't paid super close attention. But Estuary Ruiz is like another name where they traded a real dude in Duran for him. And I'm not everybody knows, if you saw my tweets when they traded for him, I'm not the biggest Estuary Ruiz fan. But other than Freeland, we're basically talking about a bunch of dudes with one major flaw somewhere in their game. And you could argue Freeland's is that he doesn't play second base, which is a small problem when we're talking about playing second base. But you've got a bunch of guys with different options. Ruiz is hitting in AAA. He's got that going for him. A 292 average, 852 OPS through tonight's game. So, Scott, you mentioned you would like to move Edman to center field. Give me the ideal. Scott is in charge. Friedman calls you and says, hey, buddy, the keys are yours. Whatever you want to do at second base, just let us know. We got 2 days. We got private planes everywhere. Who do you want playing second base in 2 days?
Is anybody going to get mad if I say Mookie Betts and bring Freeland up and let him
stop it?
Is anybody going to get mad? Is anybody?
Jeff is going to get mad. Is who's going to get mad?
I've long said before that Blake and I talk a bit, best buddies. So it's I know for the current group, Mookie Betts where it's at, leave him there. I would like to move Mookie Betts second base, but if we're going to keep him at shortstop, I'd like to give Freeland some run. I really would. If it's not Kim, I like what he's doing, but they've been giving him run in center field for a reason. It just doesn't happen. It's a position he never played, and they're giving him some time out there. He's hitting the ball, but in 2 days, I would say give Freeland a nod. 23-year-old switch hitter. He's raking against righties. They do need some help there. You've got to figure out, a way to do it. I think that would bring him up, let him play his natural position if you can, but if not, put him at second base. I would love to give him a shot. It's been a long time, guys, since we've had a prospect come up. If it's not going to be Dalton Rushing, then let it play a middle infield position. Let it be Alex Freeland. I yearn for some position player to come up from the minor leagues and have an impact. I don't care if they go crazy like a Yasiel Puig thing. I just want to give some spark, give somebody a look, because the veterans on there, we're seeing these problems at the back end and the bench, Chris Taylor, Miguel Rojas, all these guys where it's just not getting it done. And it's happening a lot earlier. We saw this, and I remember we hopped on one live. I remember closer towards the deadline, and we were like, this is a team that it's problems that the Dodgers haven't dealt with in some years. Just this much dysfunction towards the bottom half with a core group of 4 or 5. And now we're just seeing it again. But it's happening at a time where pitching's down, so all the problems are magnified. I would
Laura
like to see.
Sorry, Laura with
ahead,
the super chat is right on that. She says, "Am I the only one surprised we have this many holes this early?" Serious question. To me, Anthony, what makes this? I'm the optimist, so this is going to sound optimistic. I'm preparing everybody. It feels like we have lots of holes, and we're going to talk Max Muncy here in a second. It feels like we have lots of holes when I really think we only have one hole. The problem is that Tommy Edman bounces between plugging one hole and plugging the other hole. Yeah. And so it feels like there's 2 gaps when really there's just one. If they had anybody that they felt decent about in center field or second base, I don't think it would feel like we had this many holes. I would also add, and this is the conversation I was having with my dad via text tonight, which is, hey, he thinks he's like, Barnes sucks, Rojas sucks, Taylor sucks, all these guys at the bottom of the bench sucks. What are we doing? And I'm like, look, agree, maybe. But my point is, those guys are not among the 13 best position players they have in the organization, without a doubt. The problem is they're sitting on the bench. Like Chris Taylor, we could all say how much we hate Chris Taylor. We're 25 games in, he has 12 plate appearances. So, like, you can't really hate a guy who gets one plate appearance every less than 2 days. So, to me, it feels like, Anthony, there's just one hole at either second base or center field. If they solved one of those, then maybe this conversation goes away. Am I crazy on that, Anthony?
No, you're not. And we have talked about this before, too. If they would commit to plugging one of those holes, then the other ones start to take a little bit more shape and solidify themselves a little bit more. What they're trying to do, and I understand this, I'm not saying that they're wrong for this. A lot of fans might think they're wrong because we're in a frustrating time, even though it's April 23rd. But they are trying to give the guys a legitimate chance before they cut bait on some of these things, Pages being the main guy here. And so what Edman is being able to do is bounce back and forth to extend that leash for these guys and to extend that runway to get them through the first couple of months of the season so that the Dodgers can make a more informed decision on what they're going to do for the rest of the season. And that's what Edman is giving them right now. He's giving them some slack there. If they would just commit to say, you know what, he is going to be our second baseman or he is going to be our center fielder, then they can find the fix for that other position. And hopefully those things then start to solidify and you don't these become problems that you don't have to deal with. And maybe the bottom of the order gets helped also. Because like I said, I'm willing to give Muncy some space here and let him do his thing. I know we're getting into that as a veteran and a guy who was pretty good last year and a guy who in the last couple of weeks, 10 games or so, has shown some signs of life. He's not there yet, but it's like, okay, you're not flatlining on us anymore. Okay. But I think the biggest situation for this team that could have a domino effect in solving some of these other issues, including like left field, is committing to Edman at one of these two positions.